Yeah. Alright there, you residual gypsy sperm that swam upstream, avoided the bears and found itself within the aristocratic Fanwa. I'll tell you what happened. So I made a video about the Dangerfield's Chinese prescription, which is looming ever closer. All the excitement. We'll be making a video to confirm details very shortly. Someone in the comments said something about how I was going to arrange it and how I was going to take money or whatever. And I think there's a way where I'm going to do it where I don't take any money up front. We will lose the discount, but it's going to save a lot of hassle. And, you know, you can imagine checks and PayPal and fucking Bitcoins and Patreons. And yeah, I'm going to get confused after the second one. But there was a little line in what he said. There's a little bit in what he said where he went, I know junkies. Yeah, you put that drug in someone, they're all the same. And I'm not, and he went on to explain how he'd been, this man is carrying some resentments and he was seemingly unhappy about it. But it kind of got me thinking about that sort of thing. And so I started thinking, I want to make a video addressing something about the whole heroin thing. And I was talking to my mother. I paid a visit to her mother's the other day. And I feel for my mum. I mean, she had to put up with a hell of a lot, absolute hell with me. She all she thought, and she told me this since, was that she was going to get a phone call that I was dead. 2 decades worth of that. And although she hasn't come out with it, she's certainly hinted that since she knows addiction is a condition of chronic relapse, that still may happen until the day she dies. And that it weighs on me heavily that I've put her through that and continue to do so in many respects. But we got talking about it, and I said to her, it must be difficult, because she said these subjects come up, when she goes to the pub. She's like in a crib team and all that, kind of weird sort of traditional working class woman, my mum. I love her for it. I love her for many things. And she's part of this sort of Facebook group. She's an admin on there. So it's all quite sweet. We're watching her on the computer and that. It's better than sitting stuck in front of antiques programs and soap operas. And obviously the debate, the drug debate comes up a lot, and I said to her, it must be quite hideous, because I can assume that you'll frequently be on the end of people saying things like they should round up all the junkies and fucking chuck them in a river or something like that. And she said, yeah. She said it always happens, and I my head sort of dropped, and I just thought, that can't be nice. I haven't got children, don't intend on having any. But, to have your peers to regularly be condemning your offspring to the status of garbage, of trash, of disposable human life must be fucking difficult. And she surprised me, actually, when she said, but I always stand up for what I believe in, she said. And I sort of, I was kind of taken aback, and sort of this weird pride. And she said, I always say to them, it should be bloody legalised. And that I'm very proud of my mum for that, because I think it's difficult from people who don't know much about drugs, and I am talking specifically about heroin, and certainly in the 12-step fellowships and that they will often want to talk about drugs as narcotics as a group, not as individual substances, looking for the similarities in addiction rather than the differences, and that I can see why, because recovery doesn't really have a lot to do with the differences. But for the reasons like that, for what blah blah blah, I was so ill over the weekend because I got run down. And I've just finished a whole day's work. Like, it's midday. I started at 11 this morning, including 2 business meetings, which absolutely drain the hell out of you, listening to people who just want to talk. They just want to hear themselves and have a position in the team. And I should really go to bed, but you make yourself iller. If I didn't wear this hat as part of my presentation, I'm probably wearing it because I'm freezing. I've got a scarf on and a woolly jumper. Nice one. August in London. Nose is a bit funny. Got the snivels. But yeah, there are differences with heroin which affect this this conversation. And so for people who don't know about drugs, and for people who haven't certainly had the first-hand experience that my mum has, it must be very difficult to understand it when someone like my mum says they should be legalised. I mean, people are horrified by that. When I first started doing stand-up, I mean, I've done a video a long time ago, one of my first videos about the rules of stand-up comedy, and the first rule I tell many young comedians is be likeable. If you can nail that in the first 10, 15 seconds, if they like you, you can say anything. You know, I'd done a show, Sex Tourist, which was what it is, kind of what it sounds, but it was worse. I emptied a gun in a room full of naked children, and I was sticking methamphetamine by the ounce load up my bleeding anus. You know, if they don't like you, that goes down like hell. I mean, I've done that material when I could tell they didn't like me because of the way I presented myself. I might have been angry, might have had a shit day, kind of unprofessional. You know, a professional comic can have a shit day, can have an argument with a girlfriend, can not afford his tax bills and go and smash an hour being the funniest, most likeable person. But I managed to take all my misery and anger on stage, and audiences will get that in seconds. You know, that little window when you walk on stage and the first few things you say, that so much is established in those few seconds. And yeah, that material goes down like a lead balloon. You know, my other show, Sex with Children, about sexual abuse. If they don't like you, they don't want to hear about that stuff. And so the skill with presenting that kind of material is to be likeable. Same with talking about my drugs experiences. You know, in my early days of stand-up, when I didn't really have the skills, the technique, I hadn't learned the craft, basic stage craft of, you know, being likeable. They've come out, show them your appreciation, show them that this is about laughter, or certainly about interest and engagement. And you talk about heroin, you mentioned heroin. For the majority of that audience, they're going to think of a few things. It's going to signify a few things. AIDS, you know, not even HIV, but AIDS. This is AIDS. This is the 80s. Heroin gives you AIDS. Being mugged, having your house robbed, having your car robbed, and sort of translucent yellow people that shuffle around the street smelling of piss. You know, it doesn't have a great reputation. And you know, so for my mum to be sitting in a social group sort of saying it should be legalized, and what she's saying there, and she, you know, she'll often continue with it should be regulated, and then it will be, you know, it should be given to them by chemists in much the same way as Subutex or methadone, etc., etc. And where that leads her, what she's essentially saying is the state, the taxpayer, should give junkies heroin. And that is as you've already seen, the title of this video, Give Junkies Heroin. And I'd ask you, regardless of your knowledge in this area and experience in this area, to perhaps step back a little bit and just listen to some of my arguments and try. You know, I was thinking when I was mulling this over, I was eating a pizza on the toilet earlier. Give idiots pizza. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, you know, I'm going to have to try and get you to not to try and put emotions to one side. But actually, no. You know, I want you to keep your emotions central, because, you know, these are kind of, look, fuck it. I'm trying to control something that's out of my control here. Let me just tell you what I'm thinking. The kind of things that have maybe been thinking this. It would seem to make sense to tell you my experience of getting clean. I started using, and I kind of wanted to be a heroin addict because it had a mystique. It had it separated you from everyone. It was rare, and it was in the shadows, and excuse me, and that kind of gutter pride. I mean, the amount of teenagers or people in their young 20s, and even sort of hip hop stars and that, will have photos of them with spliffs. It's like, yeah, oh yeah, I take drugs. This isn't that obscure. I mean, it's a bit of a leap from weed to injecting heroin. But it's the same principle, and and drinking. People love listening to the blues and jazz and all those the album covers in bars of people like Tom Waits. And, people like that. They like to indulge in it, and and often they'll live their lives through that, but. So that aspect of their lives, sorry, that's ridiculous. Don't put your life in the hands of a rock and roll band. Oh no, they'll throw it all away. But there was an element of that. But I remember saying in an interview once that I kind of set out to be a heroin addict. However, didn't really know what that entailed. I think I probably knew about 0.5 of a percent. I knew that it would involve taking drugs, but the rest of it, did I get a wake up call? I got a sleep call. I got a sleep down call. Anyway, very quickly into that project, I realised that I was now trapped, that I'd made a single mistake, that I would use heroin for a time, that I'd use it once perhaps. And that mistake had now got me in a position where it was consuming everything, and it was now dominating my life. Everything was falling apart. I lost a record deal, publishing deal, management deal, all my friends and my house and my health. And it got to the point where literally all I had left in the space of about a year went from everyday use. It took a few years to get a proper habit. It's not like you read on the internet that you use it and you're addicted, or like they say with crack. It took a few years to get a proper habit, but once I realised that, I remember that morning where I woke up and I said to my girlfriend, I can't go through this again. I can't go through that sort of minor detox where we'd been using on and off for a few weeks, every other day or every few days. We'd got used to sort of every sort of week just going through a few days of agony, and I just said, I can't do it again. And she looked at me, and there was this, and this is Gail, from the Crack Diaries, who I interviewed. There's an interview with her, and I remember we were laying in this shocking little pit of a sofa bed, and there was this moment of eye contact where we both realised that we were going to score, and this had changed everything, because we weren't going to go through that period that would stop us getting a habit. And we were now junkies. We were now fully fledged heroin addicts. We weren't going to stop taking it, and that went on then after that for, I always get the maths wrong, but roughly 14, 15 years before I got clean. I wanted to get clean then. Don't get me wrong. This isn't something I thought I'm gonna keep trying at being on this and I'll work it out. I'll get it right. I wanted to get clean. I must have done 10 rehab centres, 10, 15 detox centres in those 15 years, in those 12, decade and a bit. Constantly trying to get clean, going through weeks of agony in different centres and at home, and this technique and that product and methadone and Subutex and vitamin C and tapering down and OxyContin, codeine, cold water extraction, codeine, DF118, you name it, you try and they all failed. And what happened was I set up a business. Weirdly, I was living at my mum's and I was disappearing. My mate just got me a computer, and he was a software engineer. And these are in the days, this was like before people had the internet, when there was a big tech barrier. You couldn't just get a computer and get online. Most people didn't have a computer really, and he knew how to do it. And it was all dial up. It was incredible when you were trying to download porn, because you wouldn't even get a thumbnail because it took too long. So you'd randomly click a few few things that sort of said sexy girl, miniskirt, bedroom, and you'd click it, download, and you'd set off about 20, and an hour later they'd have all downloaded, and yeah, just shit. All it might be like a bit of diamond in the rough, but that's some effort. Jesus, just get one of the old magazines from '92 out of your cupboard. He got me this computer, and I joined a forum. I can't even remember what the forum was, and I was fucking around with this old lock picking tool, and he come round and he went, "What have you been up to then?" Because he just wanted me to fucking do something. He knew I had potential. We'd known each other since we were kids, and we'd been to school together. And I said, "Well, I've joined a forum. I've been talking to..." And I remember being amazed. I remember one of the first people I spoke to on the internet was a steel worker in Illinois. And it meant so much to me. I remember it was a Sunday night though, and I was sort of feeling a bit ropey I think I'd had some speed on the Friday, which not great at that age, like 30, 32. I was feeling all sort of maudlin and melancholic, and the idea of this man's sort of honest wage, that he said he walked through the snow to the steel factory, and I was picturing Illinois and what I know from like American movies, and this man getting there, and all the sudden, my dad worked in a foundry when I was very young, casting bronze. So there was probably a link to that, and I was just thinking, compare that to my life of like petty crime. I mean, I was still selling drugs at this point, but nothing like what I was doing in my 20s, where there was a bit of actual movement and fair amount of money coming and going. This was petty. This was trying to get an handful of pills off someone and just sell them in the pub so I could pay for the week's gag. Yeah, it was desperate, and my physical health wasn't good, etc., etc. So he'd got me this computer, and he came around a few days later, and we were smoking a few joints, and I went, "Oh, I've been on a forum. Oh, I've got mates in Illinois," and he thought it was all funny because he knows what I'm like, and I was like, "Oh yeah, old Peter in Illinois. Oh, and he's it's not going well with his wife, blah blah blah." And he said to me, "You can have a forum if you want. We can set you up a forum." And in those days, what was it, GeoCities or something? You'd have these mad, it'd say you could have your own forum, but you'd think it was going to be called something like www.chrissforum.com, but after you'd gone through the insanely complicated sign-up procedure, your web address would be something like www.geocities/9857b2* ++ ! My domain / and it's not going to look good on a business card. You know what I mean? But we set up this forum, and I said, "Yeah, make it UK Bump Keys, we'll have it, And I set up a little business, and it went really well. Now, this is the important thing. I had to work my arse off, don't get me wrong. And weirdly, you can. I was taking so much heroin. I was daily 10, 20 Valium, smoking weed from morning till night. Stoners will know what it's like. There's a bifter in the ashtray from the night before, and it's almost your first breath in the morning. That joint goes in your mouth before your eyes are open. And I was working a good sort of 16 to 18 hour day trying to make this business work. So suddenly, out of the blue, I had a little bit of money. I had an income. I didn't have to go thieving. And it was weird. I didn't have no payment system set up. People were like sending like tenors through the post for these bump keys I was making. And then it got to the point where I managed to buy an ounce of heroin. And I'd always bought like little bags. And seriously, a £10 bag is a match head. And it's gone. Bang, it's finished. Half a day later, you're going to kind of need another one, or you're going to wake up like you've got the flu. And so I just bought an ounce, like £700. And instead of putting gear in the spoon, I'd put the spoon in the gear, just scoop it up, bit of citric. Couple of ounces of skunk. My mate was importing Valium from Thailand, and he was getting 50. This is all before the darknet and that, but he was getting 50,000 times 10 milligram Valium, and giving me a couple of thousand of them just to knock out to all the junkies because they like Valium. Goes well. It's like bread and butter, really. So a bit of a mess, but because I had an income, my life weirdly started to improve, even though I had more drugs. And then it was like, well, hang on a minute. Life's quite good, I had clean clothes. I was eating. which sounds weird, but you will live on jam donuts and crisps for years, really, when you're a heroin addict. But I was eating, and I was eating quite well. I liked cooking. I remember I was in my little hovel, chopping up vegetables and making. My friends jokingly around the time called me a fruitarian. We watched some documentary on breatharians, people who lived just on breathing alone. Check them out on Google. They all either die or they were lying, because you can't survive on no food. But my friends called me a fruitarian because every time they come round, I'd have a big bowl of fruit salad, and a decent one, not the one that we had as kids that come in a tin with one grape, one cherry, a few sliced peaches, and some other random fruit that had been sitting in some kind of preservative since the war. No, this was like pineapple and kiwi fruits and guava. I'm lying about the guava. I still don't know what that is. But dragon fruit, that was definitely in there. Trying to be good to myself because I had the time. And this is the thing, you see, when you're a junkie, it's a full-time job. And I mean full-time. From the minute you get up to the minute you sleep. And it's not what you hear. People going, oh, it's all about the next hit. It's not. It's all about the last one. It's not about the next one. It's all about the last one. When did I last use, i.e. when am I going to get sick? Because if you don't sort out some gear while you still got the physical energy, it's going to get harder. You're not going to be able to make the money. I mean, if you've got to go to Tesco's and rob a couple of bottles of vodka, or if you've got to, however you get your money, usually crime, but even if it's poncing off of people, you haven't got the energy to walk around all your mates' house. You've got no credit or no phone. Going around your remaining few friends out, the people you haven't managed to totally alienate, all pissing with sweat and stinking. It's just humiliating. Have you got, please, just £2 or whatever, £3? Cleaning vehicles going by outside. They never come. If I want the street cleaned, I'll start making a video. And then, lovely. If I made videos all day, this street would be like a fucking mirror in that. You'd be able to see your face in that tarmac. So I started having a bit of time. I started getting involved in things. I was trying to build up the business, and it wasn't easy. Businesses aren't. And having baths, spending time in the bath because I wasn't panicked. I knew that I could do all sorts of things that day and wake up and use rather than wake up and find the money and then use. So I was starting to have a life. Now, I'd always said to myself, if I just had the drugs I needed, I'd be fine in life. And to an extent, this had happened. All the skunk, all the Valium, all the heroin I could ever want, plenty of it. Never got sick. Never got junk sick. I got ill occasionally, but rarely. It's weird when you're using. You very rarely. You don't get common colds, or maybe you just don't know you've got them. But I thought I'd be fine, but when I had all that stuff, it was weird. My friends were coming around and saying, why don't you do something? And I was like, well, I made a fruit salad yesterday, and I'm building up a business. So they're going, but why don't you go on holiday? Why don't you go somewhere? Now, there's no going on holiday because you've got to smuggle drugs on aeroplanes, or you've got to find them when you arrive there. You're gonna turn up anywhere sick, and not knowing the heroin scene in Ibiza. It's probably one of the worst examples, I'm sure. Well, as it's no surprise that I used to holiday in Cambodia and Thailand, put it like that. But there was certainly an issue of my isolation. I wasn't talking to people and I wasn't doing as much engaging with people. And after a while, I remember one day just sitting there looking at all these drugs, and a bit of money building up in my bank for the first time ever. Well, apart from the drug money, but drug money comes and goes, and 1 week you're getting a suit made, the next week you ain't got a pot to piss in. And this was money I'd earned, and there was a sense that there'd be a flow of it. I had a cash flow, so you could spend money, and the next month it'll be replaced. If things continued, if I carried on working hard, which I was. I remember looking at it all and just thinking, if you don't get clean, this is your life now till you die. Because it's all you've been doing for the last 6 months. You've had all these drugs, you've had a bit of money, and okay, you're a fruitarian, but nothing else much happening. I've always dreamt of being a storyteller and a writer, a comedian of sorts, performer, and the writing was rubbish. I was out of my nut. It's rubbish. To write, to be creative, on the whole, you need to have a clarity of mind, a clarity of vision. You know, you need to pull on all your mental resources, and generally drugs destroy them. I mean, there's the odd period in history where you can use them to smash convention, see things from different areas. LSD certainly gave me that. It gave me a critical distance from the familiar. Wittgenstein talks about it. So I could re-see things for the first time. But luckily the acid stops working 12 hours later and you get back to your normal life and you can use those ideas. But when you're permanently just shit-faced, it wasn't good quality. I had stacks and stacks of notepads, giving myself the impression that I was being creative. I remember when I threw them away. You know, I opened them and it would all be just, you know, it's embarrassing, but it was all such dramatic, self-indulgent nonsense that I wouldn't be surprised 50% of drug addicts and alcoholics had also collected somewhere with the little stupid little drawings and that, and like, you know, life, it's like a slow motion suicide, you know. I'm on some horizontal glide. Oh yeah. I mean, it was worse than I can improvise now, thankfully. And it's kind of strange that it was when I didn't have to live the junkie lifestyle, when I was finally free of the dramas and the police action and the petty crime and the scoring dramas. Scoring itself can take you a day. You know, often it doesn't. And these days with the dark net, that's different. But most junkies aren't on the dark net, I can assure you. But scoring, you know, you go to another town, that means getting a train, but you've only got 20 quid, exactly 20 quid, and the train's going to cost you £3.50, so you've got to bunk it onto the train. You might get caught jumping over the fence with all the razor wire and the anti-vandal paint, and then get arrested, and then get taken down the station. Now you start withdrawing, and they'll keep you there for as long as possible to fucking rattle you, because they're vindictive guns, and they don't like junkies, understandably, because of the time they take up. And then when you get there, the bloke who said, yeah, come over, by the time you knock on his door or next time you ring him, he doesn't answer the phone, or his door ain't got none left. And then it's another town, another dealer. Then you might finally get the gear, get home, open it up, and he's giving you crack instead of heroin. They always sell one or the other. I mean, yeah, they don't care. They just want to give you some bags. That's if it's a drug at all. You might get home and open it up, and it's a lump of a classic one is the. You know, when there's a car crash, the windscreen tends to break in little squares, or certainly used to. It'll be like a bit of that, because a lot of heroin doesn't come as powder, it comes in little blocks. And you unwrap you're all sort of shaking in a public toilet somewhere with your mate. I say mate, junkie partner. And you open this wrap, and there's cling film, and then another bit of paper, then a bit of Rizzler, and there's a little square bit of glass, and you both almost start crying. Your eyes well up. Because now, not only have you got to find another dealer, but you've got to find the money again. How? You've done all your mates, you know, you've burnt all those bridges, you sold everything. Most people have been on heroin for a couple of years. Their houses will be a television, widescreen, no, the big as you can get, £20 on a junk shop, television, kettle, and some kind of Z bed or mattress, really. So everything's gone. It's bleak. So it was finally when I had a decent supply of my drugs. Sounds horrible to say that, but that was the fact. What I wanted, that I had a chance to just look at my life and think, this is bullshit. You know, you've got all the drugs you've ever wanted, and you're doing nothing really. I was working, but that's not life. You don't work. You don't live to work. You work to live. And I was doing the opposite. It was almost like addictive. I was addictively working, like I say, sort of 16, 18 hours a day. You know, I was cutting keys, I was working a forum, I was doing the sales, I was doing every aspect of a business, running myself into the ground. So it was when I committed to getting clean, and which is what you got to do. Yes, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt like hell. Yes, it's going to take a long time. You'll read it's a hard weekend. No bollocks. You're looking at a couple of months until you've even started getting. You know, that's just going to be your physical. You know, you've got problems with your dopamine receptors. They've just depleted because you've been flooding your brain with dopamine. So whatever you do, you just don't feel engaged. The drug that makes you feel happy about life, your brain physically cannot absorb enough of it. So you're just sort of numb for another 4 or 5 months. Now, that's key really, because If you expect to take a heroin addict who's got nothing in their life, they've lost all their friends, their family has alienated them, there's a few warrants out for them, they've got Hep C, maybe HIV, other diseases, emphysema, skin problems, all sorts of health problems, not from the drug, by the way, from not eating, not sleeping, not drinking water, having no money to do a lot of that, having no sense of self-care because they've become self-haters. It becomes self-harm. If all they've got left in their life is heroin, what, you're going to take that away from them? You're going to say to them, we're going to chuck you in this old mental hospital, which a lot of the detoxes on the NHS are. A couple of the ones I certainly were, these mad old Victorian buildings. At night, you're convinced you can hear the screams of a history of the oppression of insanity. Dark institutions, where 3/4 of the wall is painted sort of like a puke yellow, and then the bottom bit is like this sort of olive green in 2-part epoxy resin, thick paint, which is to stop the trolleys they're pushing around of mental people from hacking into the brickwork. And they're basically saying, we're going to chuck you in there for 4 weeks, so you're going to walk out of there still withdrawing. To what? What are you going to walk out there to? Nothing. To go back to that house. So you go in there and it's just filth, squalor. It's just squalor. Now, your average junkie at this, they're 30, 35 years old. They've got no work history. They've done nothing since they left school. Now, don't get me wrong. While I'm saying all this, I'm not blaming anyone. No one's to blame except for the addict. No addict, including this one, has got any right to blame anyone. You could have been fucked by your mother and father, the fucking family dog. You could have had your hands chopped off. Whatever happened to you, it's your choice to take drugs, and that addiction is your responsibility. There's no blaming anyone. I'm not making that excuse. But I'm just being realistic, because you'll see I'm going to get to the social cost, the cost to you, the cost to everyone else, and why giving junkies heroin makes sense to them and you. To you, seriously, to you. As much as you don't want to. I know how most of you feel. I saw it in that bloke's writing. He was, I'll try and find the quote and I'll try and stick in the description. I know junkies. How do I know you're not going to fuck me over, you little shit? It was, it's harsh. And I get that, I get that. Why would you not think that? When you're out working hard all day long and you're not getting paid a lot of money, and then this lot just sort of shuffling about, robbing people, doing nothing. A drain on society, on the courts, on the prisons, on the law, on your taxes. Wasting your taxes so they can sit there with a bit of dribble coming out their mouth. Claiming dole, claiming sickness benefit for the rest of their lives. I understand, but hear out my argument. Or hear out, it's less of an argument, it's a position. Hear my position. So you want to throw these people in this rehab centre, detox centre, really, proper rehab, 6 months, 3 months maybe, but God, that's a long shot. And I was in, when I got clean at 36, it's a rolling program, so there's people who are on there, people are leaving while people are joining, but there's roughly sort of 20 of you throughout. And I think, out of my main group, I think like there's 3 of us are still alive. And it's not all heroin, mainly alcohol is the killer. People drink themselves to death easy. It's actually quite hard to die from heroin. Yeah, that surprised you. Most heroin deaths are alcohol and heroin, which is easy to die from. The heroin deaths that do happen is to do with the lack of regulation. The fact that someone's going to put a 10 bag in, every day they're going to have a 10 bag. When that heroin quality goes up through the roof and they don't know because it's not regulated, 10 bag goes in. The difference between an effective and a lethal dose is quite small. But when they do when they find out cause of death, they're not bothered the fact there was alcohol in their system. Test England on a Saturday morning and see how many people have got alcohol in their system. that doesn't get written down. It's like, no, they were using heroin. Heroin killed them for sure. Often not the case. Frequently not the case. Fact check this. Nice steam throat. Fact check this. Feel free. I'm not making this up. Anyway. Now, I've got a calculator here. Might not need it. But let's look at some basic figures. Let's take the town I was in. Now, I knew about 100 regular heroin users. Almost all of them used crack as well. The reason heroin addicts will use crack is it's one of the few things that touches the sides. You know, nothing else really works. And heroin users tend to stop smoking weed. What, 20 quid an eighth? You can fuck that, man. That's 2 days. That's heroin money, you know. But crack will hit you and it'll wake you up and it'll give you something. So they're often. So say 100, and it's all, without doubt, you can times that by 10 for that area. They're just the ones I knew. Let's say 100. Now they need 30 quid a day just to not be sick. And you hear people say, oh, after a while you just use to feel normal. But for a lot of these people, feeling normal is a luxury. They never felt normal. That's why I've said in videos about heroin before, if you try it, if you're a young person, you try it and you like it, go and get psychological help. Go and find a psychotherapist. Because if you like it, you've got a problem. There's no real drug effect with heroin. It's not like taking acid and you're on acid and all the psychedelia. Or you smoke weed and whoa, music's lovely and drawing's brilliant and movies are incredible and food's delicious. Alcohol, loss of inhibitions, or you're dancing and you're chatting to men or you're chatting to women regardless of your sexuality. Whatever. There's a drug effect, ecstasy, it's called ecstasy for Christ's sake. It's not called skag. But there's no real drug effect with heroin. What it is a painkiller. Kills pain, physical and mental. And so when you take that and you like it, because the first time you have it, you're going to puke. That's going to go on for weeks. If you're not doing it regularly, every time you have it, you will puke. Probably 4 or 5 times, and for the next day as well. But if you like that, it has removed baggage. It has taken away deep, often invisible emotional pain. So 30 quid. So there's 100 of them. 100 of them. We're just taking that little 100. 100 times £30. £3,000, right? A day. Okay? £3,000 a day. 100 junkies. Let's see how many heroin addicts UK number. Right, this number is only going to be the ones that have told someone, registered. Right, let's see what it says here. I mean, I'm just going to a rough one here. Okay, according to the 2012-2013 crime survey for England and Wales, an estimate... that's how many times people have used. Okay, yeah. It is estimated there are around... Oh, for fuck's sake, why can't... These figures are so weird. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Why is this so really weird? It's like in Scotland. It's got in Scotland and in Afghanistan. Jesus, man, I can't get these figures. I don't know. But 100 junkies is costing £3,000 times 365. So we got a year. So it's 1,095,000. So just short of £1.1 million a year. Okay? Is that right? That seems ridiculous. 3,000 times 365. Yeah. That amount of money. That's for 100. Is that right? Jesus. That can't be right. That's incredible. My maths ain't great anyway. Well, yeah. Yes, that is right. So just over £1 million a year to keep 100 junkies in their basic habit. Now that's 30 quid. Now I can tell you most are going to be using more like 5 bags of brown and 5 bags of white a day. That's for 1 year. That's for 100 junkies in 1 year in one town. How many towns like that are there in the UK? 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000? I don't know. I haven't got a clue. Can you see how big these figures are going? Now that £1.1 million a year, bearing in mind the average habit goes on for 10, 15 years. That's got to be found from somewhere. That they're not earning that money. They're not out at work. Some are. You know, I've worked while I've had a habit. My business was very successful in the early days. You know, I know people. I know there are junkies that get on. You know, again, once they've got, and this is part of my argument, once they've got access to a regular and clean, decent supply, they can work. They can get on with their lives. But where's that £1.1 million a year for those 100? If you can find the figures, I ain't wasting time on this video boring you searching around for figures. I went to the shittest website. Now, it says here that 50,000 people were using the drug last year, but Jesus, all right, look at that, 50,000 times what I just told you. The numbers are incredible. Where's that money coming from? I'll tell you, it's coming from their families, mothers, rarely fathers. A lot of addicts haven't got fathers. It's a thing. A lot have, most haven't. That authority's gone. Crime, thieving it. From houses, from muggings, from cars, from shopping centres, from fucking off licenses, supermarkets. You name it. If there's something that you can pick up and run away with, you will. Other crimes, selling drugs, of course. These millions and millions of pounds daily. Hundreds of thousands of millions of pounds daily being stolen from your communities to feed this habit. Now, bearing in mind that to produce an ounce of opium apparently costs less than to produce an ounce of tea. Yeah, English breakfast tea. You know, opium poppies will grow in the roughest, shittest soil. I think you get 2 harvests a year. And then turning it from opium into heroin is a pretty simple procedure. It's not major science. People do it on hillsides with barrels and baskets and bits of linen to strain it. Simple process. Clean it up a bit, isolate something. What do you put in it? About to tell you. You don't need to know, dear. You don't need to know. Chuck a couple of molecules on the side of the morphine and you've got diacetylmorphine, heroin. So all that money is being taken from your communities. On top of that, the policing. Policing heroin costs not only more money, your money, taxpayers' money, to pay for police. So think again of the money, but then on top of that, this is then police time that is not being used to tackle murder, rape, violent crime, theft, etc., etc. Because their time is being wasted picking up junkies on the street and searching them, taking them back down the cells, getting them to court. They go to court. They were caught with 3 bags on them. Slap on the wrist, small fine, a fine, something like 50 quid fine. How much do you reckon it cost to process them to that point? A few thousand, and all the police time the police could be using, spending on proper real crimes, not the individual choice of people. So you've got, not only have you got the money wasted on police time, but the amount, I think I read an article, again, check this, I read an article that the police said they spend something like 70% of their budget on drugs. I mean, for fuck's sake, prohibition doesn't work, never has. You know, it's weird that historically campaigners, reformers were looking at the left. You know, look at the left wing, you know, your hippies, and you're sort of like, hey man, you know, if people want to take drugs, they're sick, yeah. It's funny how, a lot of people are quite happy that addiction is being seen as a disease. For me, that's laughable. I don't think it fits the definition of a disease. This is not cancer, is it? There's not something growing in you. There's not an identifiable there's something you've contracted or whatever. But also, it's weird how over sort of the last 50 years, heroin addicts have gone from criminals to sick to mentally ill. Criminals to mentally ill. Nice. Another 50 years, they might just be people who have made a mistake and continue to, even though the evidence suggests that they shouldn't, which a lot of people do. Now that's the other argument, of course, isn't it? Well, should we be giving people drugs? It's dangerous. Well, when it's regulated, I'd argue how dangerous it was. Driving a car is very dangerous. Have you seen these people on YouTube who go rock climbing with no ropes? They're heroes. People look at them, wow, it's amazing. What happens when they die? And they do, these people have accidents. Look at sportsmen, sports people. People who, racing Formula 1 drivers who die. What do people say after that? Well, to be honest with you, you shouldn't have bloody done it in the first bloody place. That's what you're going to get with a junkie. Why are these people driving cars? For the thrill of it, yeah? That's what drug addicts want. And they dedicate their life to being sports people. This isn't a thing they do at the weekend. This isn't casual use. They dedicate their lives to it. From very young, they get up and they train, they go out, and then one day they get their legs snapped playing football. But they're heroes, these people. Boxers. Yeah, I was a champion. I'm 52 years old. I can't think straight. Synapses falling out of their ears. I'm not trying to draw an equivalent, but people do things that are dangerous. It should be their choice. So you regulate it. You have to go to the chemist to get it. Comes in a little bottle. How much rock and roll music's going to get made about that? Going to the chemist, signing your name, getting this little box, coming home with your needles, sticking it in you, taking energy away from your life, taking emotions out of your life. You think more people will do it? Why? You're not in these circles. It's so easily accessible. Anyone who can buy weed, the old six. What is it? The 6 thingies of separation. 6 stages of separation. You're 6 handshakes away from the president or something. So close to Trump. Chardonnay. Well, it's much the same with that. If you can buy weed, it's only going to be a couple of questions before you can buy heroin. Most people on working class estates in England know a heroin dealer. Sorry, but it's a fact. Are they doing it? Why would they if it was legal? Why would they if that aura was taken away from it? And so what if they wanted to make that choice? Now, with the money you save, and we are talking billions globally, annually. Let's be honest. This is the courts, the amount of people in prison for drug offences. Is it not the majority? The prisons, the courts, the policing, all that stuff, all the rehab, all the pointless, useless lip service, 3 weeks in, subutext out rehab that doesn't work. God, I know no one who's got clean off of one of those NHS 3 week in and outers. Admittedly, it contributes to getting the ball rolling. The idea that you might be able to get clean, and there is that little thing there that someone with no money can go and they can hear people tell them to start the explanation, start the conversation. You can get clean. Would you like to get clean? Tell me your problems. But they don't get people clean, not through that little process. This is massive. This is billions of pounds. And of course, where's all that money for drugs going? Where is that £1 million a year? For 100, just 100. Go and find out how many it is and then do the maths. Where's that going? To criminals. It's going to criminals. Drug gangs. They're getting all that money. All that money they steal from you, from your communities. All that money they're pouncing off their mothers is going to drug gangs. Legalise the lot. Regulate all of it. And then that money's going to the government. They can tax it. Governments could tax it. The production price, they can still tax it something silly like 5,000%. £5 a bag. It's still cheaper than what they're going to be paying dealers. It's purer, so they're not going to need as much. They're not going to be in and out of hospital every few months with abscesses and shit because it's pure gear. Where's the money going? To the government. The government can use that money to pay for decent, long-term, well-invested rehabilitation. They can offer the addict housing. So it's not going to be, look, you who's got nothing, no house, no life, no job. We're going to put you in rehab. You're going to be there for 6 months. Then we're going to put you in secondary where you're going to start rebuilding your life. We're going to get you retrained and we're going to sponsor apprenticeships and training and work programs. So it's not like go and get clean, then go back to your hovel and your no life. It's if you're willing to come on this course and show commitment to a changed life, in a year and a half, 2 years, you could have full employment, a nice place, something, don't get me wrong, we're not going to be giving people mansions, but somewhere to live, a future. Because when they've got no future, their fault, I get that, but you've got to throw that away for a minute. You're not going to be able to take that last thing, the thing that keeps them away from the reality of their lives. You're not going to be able to take that off them because it's all they've got. It's all they've got left. Yes, it's their fault, but you're suffering because of it. And your reluctance to want to do something about that will continue you suffering. You're suffering, the communities, the taxpayer is suffering more than the junkie because of the way the junkie is viewed. All that money, billions and billions and billions, is taken out of criminals' hands and put into government hands. Find a junkie using, arrest them, right? Do you want to go to rehab? We can have you in there tonight. Go and get your kettle and your picture of the girl you went out with in 92. And we'll meet you and we'll send you to rehab tonight. We'll do you a decent reduction. It will take 6 months trying to get someone clean in 3 weeks. Come on. Everyone benefits. And where's this happening? In Portugal. They decriminalised drugs in Portugal. Go and have a look at the success story. And like I say, it's not just the success story on the one level, but it's the police time that's been freed up. It's the people that are getting into serious, long-term, well-invested detox programs that might seem expensive, but it's a false economy to throw someone into 10 shitty rehabs. I've been through them. When you can send them to one decent one that's a long period of time where you can offer them a life. So yeah, I'm saying give junkies heroin. It makes so much sense. And who's going to do that? What political party is going to have the balls to go, we're looking at lowering income tax, we're looking at more investment in public sector, blah, 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 and we're going to legalise drugs? It doesn't sound as weird as it sounded 20 years ago. It doesn't sound as weird as it sounded 20 years ago. Believe me, when my mother, admittedly, she's had a direct experience to it, but when she says it, if you're interested in this kind of thing, I would recommend a couple of books. What is it? In the Belly of the Hungry Ghosts, I think. Gabor Mate, Canadian writer. And Johann Hari's, what is it? The something Scream. The beginning and the end of the drugs war. And how the drugs war, prohibition, has never worked. It's been a huge global failure with more casualties than any other war. And it's usually the people not directly involved. I'll put those links in the description. Thanks for listening.